Big Apple Blitz with Anthony Rivardo and Matt O'Leary.
Hello and welcome into another episode of Big Apple Blitz. What's going on? Matt O'Leary with Anthony Rivardo. Anthony, how is it going for you this Thursday morning?
It's going great. It's been an interesting week for the Giants. Really been an interesting week all around the NFL with cut day on Tuesday, waiver wire on Wednesday, and now the Giants making some moves here and there to shore up the back end of their roster, their practice squad, and everything else. But some pretty surprising moves made by the Giants and some big takeaways for both the Giants and the Jets from these initial 53-man rosters.
Yeah, it was cut down day on Tuesday. The rosters are set for now. A lot can change, obviously, before the start of the regular season, but they're down to 53. There's been some moves already for each side here. So figured we'd start with your New York Giants and pull up a look at what their depth chart is looking like after the roster cut downs. We take it wherever you want. Biggest surprises or just things of note on either the offense or defensive side of the ball.
Well, number one, I'll say I'm very happy that Tommy DeVito did not get cut. We can continue having our chicken cutlets every Sunday, Monday, and Thursday that the Giants are playing. So I'm very happy about that. Actually, I had chicken cutlets last night for dinner. Shocker to everybody, I'm sure. Wide receiver position, though, that was where the surprises came. Isaiah Hodgins getting released. Now, Isaiah Hodgins, not saying that he's some sort of superstar to write home about, but during that 2022 season where the Giants exceeded all expectations, won a playoff game, he played a huge role in that and honestly looked like a competent starting receiver. So the fact that they were unable to continue to develop him last year, he pretty much got phased out of the offense, turned into a backup. First of all, red flag to the Giants coaching staff. Then he goes into the summer competing for a roster spot with Allen Robinson. The Giants cut both Hodgins and Allen Robinson, which I thought was very surprising. Not only that, they also placed Isaiah McKenzie on season-ending injured reserve. So now this Giants receiving room, to me, doesn't have a whole lot of good depth. I mean, that was the number one strength that we were talking about all summer when we were previewing the 53-man roster. I kept saying the Giants have excellent receiving depth because Isaiah Hodgins could start on several teams. Allen Robinson could start on several teams. Now their backups include Bryce Ford Wheaton, who is completely unproven, has never even played in an NFL game, and has dealt with significant injuries, and Gunnar Olszewski, who is not a wide receiver, is a kick returner and punt returner. He does not make an impact or move any type of needle from the wide receiver position. So you've got your big four. You've got Neighbors, you've got Robinson, you've got Hyatt, and you've got Slayton. Those are great. What happens when one of those guys gets injured? Am I really relying on Bryce Ford Wheaton or Gunnar Olszewski to go out there and play in a regular season football game? Thankfully, Isaiah Hodgins is back on the practice squad, but I really just don't see the rationale behind this. I get it. Bryce Ford Wheaton, he contributes well on special teams. He made a role there for himself this summer. But Isaiah Hodgins also was the Giants' best run-blocking wide receiver. I thought that he had plenty of value in that facet of the game. So I don't really get this decision. Not crazy about it. Again, I don't want to blow it up and make it like the end of the world because we are talking about WR5/6 here. But still, when you're looking at the roster takeaways, that was the biggest surprise to me and probably the move that I'm most critical about.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up first because I thought the wide receiver room was the first thing that jumped out to me with the New York Giants. I like their top four: Neighbors, Hyatt, Wan'Dale Robinson, Darius Slayton. I think that is a really good unit. But after that, as you rightfully pointed out, it gets very, very weak very quickly. Bryce Ford Wheaton is a question mark. You have no idea what he's going to be. And they kept Gunnar Olszewski to be their returner, which is fine. But I almost wonder why, like, if you're going to carry him, he's essentially not a wide receiver. It's just another special team guy. So really you have 5 wide receivers. Why not carry a seventh, technically, if Gunnar Olszewski is going to slot in here and have Isaiah Hodgins make the roster? Because as you mentioned, once again, in 2022, he at least looked serviceable with Daniel Jones, and they had, a connection. And, him as wide receiver 5 instead of one of the starting 2 or 3, is a really big difference. I just don't understand Joe Shane's philosophy with how he decided to build out that room.
I'm with you. I don't see the philosophy either. And again, I think that selling point of Hodgins being their best run blocking wide receiver, I think that was a point that didn't get discussed enough and really should have been more of a reasoning to keep Isaiah Hodgins. Like, that's a very underrated thing. I don't trust Malik Neighbors necessarily as a run blocker. Definitely don't trust Wandale. Definitely don't trust Jalen Hyatt. Darius Slayton is okay in that regard, but I don't know. I think that's just an underrated facet of the running game and the rushing attack there. But looking ahead to the rest of the roster, they did sign a linebacker, Curtis Bolton, from the Miami Dolphins today, or maybe last night it was. Basically a core special teamer, but had a dominant preseason playing linebacker. And linebacker was one of those interesting positions for the Giants because they have Bobby Okereke, they have Micah McFadden. Behind them, a lot of special teamers like Carter Coughlin, Darius Masua, and now Curtis Bolton. They had Deontay Johnson, who they really liked, but they have to place him on injured reserve for at least the first 4 weeks of the season. So again, like with wide receiver, the rationale there was to prioritize special teams. Looking at linebacker, outside of Okereke and McFadden, these are all special teams players. Like, they don't have true backups at either of these positions, wide receiver or linebacker. These guys are not known for playing the linebacker position. Carter Coughlin barely played any defense last year. He only played special teams. Same with Darius Masua. So, like you said, you don't see the rationale at the wide receiver spot. I'm feeling similarly about linebacker. Just some confusing decisions here. I get it. Special teams, very important, huge facet of the game. You got to focus on all three of those facets. But I don't know. It's almost like they're sacrificing a lot of depth on both sides of the ball just to prioritize bringing in some special teamers. And I am a little bit confused by it.
Yeah, I mean, special teams is important. I don't want to minimize the importance of, specials, and you have to have players who fit that bill. But you mentioned it with wide receiver. God forbid one of the top four guys goes down. Then what do you do? To me, linebacker almost looks worse because if Okereke or McFadden go down, then what? Then you're having a guy who's a 6th-round pick from this year step in, or a 7th-rounder from 4 years ago that's pretty much only been a special teamer, or Curtis Bolton, who you just signed off the scrap heap. Like, to me, I look at the linebacker spot as the depth of it as a potential weakness. I like Okereke, and I think McFadden could be good for them. But beyond those two, that's another one where the drop off is pretty extreme very quick.
Totally with you. And I like Micah McFadden a lot, probably more than most. He gets a lot of criticism from Giants fans for one reason or another. I guess for missed tackles. I don't know. I don't care. I think Micah McFadden's a really good player. But behind him, again, like I said, it's all special teamers. I don't trust any of those guys to actually step in and play solid linebacker. And just very confusing. And then you obviously get to the waiver wire day where the Giants were anticipated to be one of the most active teams. They placed one waiver wire claim. They got their waiver wire claim, Anthony Johnson Jr., safety, formerly with the Green Bay Packers. I like him. I thought that was a really nice pickup for this team who needed depth at safety. They only had Pinnock, Belton, and Newbin on the roster, and I guess maybe Gervarius Owens, but he might have been going to IR. So they bring in Anthony Johnson, give themselves a little bit more depth there, but they didn't do anything to address cornerback, and I don't know if they will. We've only got, less than 2 weeks away until the start of the regular season, and their cornerback 2 position is still a competition between Nick McLeod and Cordell Fly and Trey Hawkins. They still don't have a CB2. So I don't know if picking up anybody on the waiver wire would have solved that problem, but at least it could have given them another option, and they still don't have another option. So cornerback was a position of need and a position of concern 2 weeks ago. It's still a position of need and still a position of concern, maybe even more so because we didn't get the returns on Cordell Fly and Nick McLeod that we anticipated from the summer.
Yeah, I don't think you could really make the case that either one of those two guys ran away with this competition. It's still, the calendar's about to flip to September, and I don't think we have any idea who's going to be starting across from Deonte Banks, which I think at this point, after preseason, heading into week 1 against the Minnesota Vikings, you'd have liked to know, all right, who's going to be that starter, and who do you think it is? Do you think it's Flott? Do you think it's McLeod? Any idea the direction they go here?
Well, see, the thing with Cordell Flott is they wanted him to be the starter, and he barely played this summer. Like, he got a quad injury or something very early on. He didn't practice after that. I don't think he played in a single preseason game. So he missed over 3 weeks of football. I don't know how he goes into week 1 as the starter. Like, if the Giants do put out that first depth chart for the regular season, or just whoever lines up in the starting 11 September 8th versus the Vikings, honestly, dude, I better not see Cordell Flott out there. He has not earned that job. That is completely unfair for this lanky slot cornerback to be starting at CB2 after barely practicing this summer. At least give it to McLeod because he did practice, but even he was banged up a little bit. Trey Hawkins honestly looked the best of the 3 in the preseason. That's because he played the most out of the 3 in the preseason. Again, Flott didn't play at all. McLeod missed more than 1 game. I think that Trey Hawkins at this point has won that starting job. But again, he had the starting job last year. He lost it by week 3 because he had a 158.3 perfect passer rating again. So there is no solution foreseen at the CB2 spot. Maybe the scheme is the solution. Maybe the new pass rush, the revamped pass rush is the solution. I'm hoping that's the case. But I don't know. I mean, I think that the Giants need to make some sort of a move here in free agency, whether that's bringing back Adoree Jackson, who's clearly past his prime, or signing Caleb Farley, who has familiarity with defensive coordinator Shane Bowen during their shared time in the Tennessee Titans. I don't know what their solution is going to be, but they have to find something here because CB2 completely unestablished, and I don't trust Cordell Flott for anything, and a lot of these other guys as well just don't compel me.
No, yeah, I don't really blame you on that one. For Caleb Farley, that's one that makes sense. I mean, you have the relationship from Tennessee. He's someone who feels like he needs a fresh start. If you want to go the veteran route, as you just said, Adoree Jackson makes sense, but it's getting late. Like, it's very soon to the start of the regular season, less than 2 weeks now. So I don't really know what the plan is, but I guess we'll have to see. Let's get into a couple comments here, and then we'll get back to these rosters. JV Bronx says, I still have high hopes for DJ, especially that he got a weapon with Malik Neighbors. Your reaction to still having hope for Daniel Jones going into the year 6 leap?
Listen, I won't judge anybody for having faith in Daniel Jones and having faith in the year 6 leap. Like, he's the Giants starting quarterback. You want to root for him. You want him to be great. I just personally haven't seen enough over the last 5 seasons to justify my confidence. I don't have the confidence. I thought last year, prior to his injuries, he looked really bad. And that was going into the second season with Brian Daboll, where he was expected to make this jump. The offensive line on paper in week 1 last year was better than the offensive line on paper in week 1 the year prior. They had injuries that all fell apart. I get all of these factors that have gone against Daniel Jones, but at one point or another, when you're in your 5th or 6th season, you have to start rising above all of those confounding variables that may or may not pull you back and prevent you from playing your best game. You have to at least be average when you don't have everything going for you. When he doesn't have everything going for him, he's significantly below average. So for me, I don't have confidence in him. I'm hoping he proves me wrong. I'll say that every single time. There's a lot of Giants fans that get upset when you say you don't have confidence in Daniel Jones. Listen, I don't have the confidence, but I pray to God that I'm wrong and that he ends up proving me wrong and having a great season. It's just really tough to foresee after a shaky past few seasons.
Now, what about Peters? He says Tommy Cutlets year 2 leap. Are you buying the year 2 leap? I know you're selling the year 6 leap, but year 2 Tommy Cutlets?
Of course, I am all in on the Tommy DeVito year 2 leap. Now, whether or not it actually happens, whether or not I really foresee it happening is another story, but I'm hopeful to see it happen because I love the kid and I think he's a lot of fun to root for. Obviously, I have my bias here, but I think that he did a lot of good things last year as a rookie. Just needs some more time to grow, needs some actual opportunities to play with some starters. They had him playing with all the guys that they cut in these preseason games, which wasn't necessarily fair to Tommy DeVito. But no, I mean, I don't think that Daniel Jones is being taken off the field that early in the season. And even if he is, Drew Lock is going to get the nod first. It's going to take a lot for Tommy DeVito to see regular season playing time this year.
Yeah, they would have to go through a lot, it seems. And I had another question, not necessarily 53-man roster related in like the cut down, but it's important. It's an important factor to the 2024 New York Giants season. I wanted to pull it up, but shout out to, I don't know if you ever heard of them. Fireside Giants has this awesome graphic that I wanted to pull up, but we can't see it because it's being blocked right now. Come on. This is bad on the fly. There we go. Joe Shane's quote: "We have enough guards." When asked about moving Evan Neal to guard, wanted to get your reaction and talk through the quote from the Giants GM.
Listen, it's just Eric Flowers 2.0. I also have to send the correction to our graphic designer because it was Brian Dable who made that quote. So I have to send out a correction notice. But anyway, on that quote, it's still frustrating in and of itself because we've seen this. We've literally lived through this era before. The Giants spent a top 10 pick on Eric Flowers back in, I want to say it was 2015. He did not pan out, but he panned out in the NFL, just not with the New York Giants. He ended up leaving the Giants, going to the Dolphins, playing guard, becoming an average starter. He played starting level guard play for the Washington Commanders as well. All he needed was just a change of scenery and a change of position. Who's to say that it's not the same thing for Evan Neal? What if he plays guard, which he did at a very high level during his collegiate season, freshman season with Alabama? He was a damn good left guard. I just don't see why you wouldn't at least try and explore the possibility. Like, they don't have enough guards. I know that's the quote, but Aaron Stinney doesn't move the needle. Who else is on there? Jake Kubas, undrafted free agent. You have nothing invested in him. He doesn't move the needle. He doesn't prevent you from attempting to see if you can unlock something in a former top 10 pick in Evan Neal. So I just feel like the Giants are wasting potential, wasting talent here. They got to try and do something to spark Evan Neal and get him to improve. So far, they have been unable to do so, and their refusal to try something new here is ultimately what's going to kill them. I think that it's either adapt or die, and right now the Giants aren't adapting.
So I'm really to believe that an undrafted free agent from a D2 school isn't enough or is enough to not move Evan Neal over. I don't get it. Like that's just so bizarre to me why he's stopping you from moving Evan Neal, who again was a seventh overall pick. I think both Anthony and I are pretty down on the prospects of him being a right tackle, but the only card you have left to play if you're the Giants is changing his position. You're not moving him to the left side of the offensive line because one, you have Andrew Thomas there, and two, if you can't do it on the right side, how are you supposed to believe you could do it on the left side? So why don't you see what he could do at guard, where you rightfully pointed out, at Georgia, you look good doing it, or Alabama. I'm sorry. Where did he go to school? Bama?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Alabama. No, I'm with you, though. I don't get it. Like, he looked really good at guard in the past. And when you watch Evan Neal play, just name some of his biggest weaknesses. He's a little slow off the line of scrimmage. He doesn't have the foot quickness to seal the edge. And he gets beat by shifty edge rushers. None of those problems really relate to the guard spot. What is he good at? He's good at anchoring against a bull rush. He's good at being a mauler in the running game. Where do those strengths thrive? At guard. So take his strengths, play him where they might be utilized better, and mask his weaknesses, and boom, you might actually get a decent player out of Evan Neal. I don't know why they're hesitant to do so. I don't know why they're refusing to do so. But again, it just all makes sense. He's got experience playing guard. He's been awful at right tackle. His weaknesses get masked at guard. His strengths get amplified there. It just makes sense, but the Giants are refusing to do it.
I don't get it. I really don't. Anything else on the Giants roster decisions before we transition and get into some of the Jets roster choices?
Yeah, I mean, other than what we discussed, there's not too much to take away. I think that there was another moment yesterday, though, with Joe Shane speaking in a press conference. I think it was Dan Duggan of The Athletic asked him, related to John Mara, saying he needed to see significant improvement this season, owner John Mara. And Joe Shane said, well, you had the opportunity to ask him, so just ask him again, blah, blah, blah. And he got kind of defensive and like a little bit angry. And I thought it was weird. And I thought that it just came across as a general manager feeling the fire and feeling like he's under pressure. And I don't like that. We're less than 2 weeks away from the start of the regular season. When the GM is getting defensive against the media, it's usually not a good sign. So my concern level for this team has been pretty high all offseason. It's only growing as we get closer to the regular season, especially after the GM just looked like he was standing on shaky ground following cut day.
Yeah, the Connor Hughes, who covers both Jets and Giants for SNY, had a comment saying that it felt like more of a in-season press conference when like a team is struggling. And unfortunately, he's covered the Jets for a long time and has been at a lot of those press conferences where team's not looking so hot in the middle of the season. There's a lot of questions for the GM to answer, and kind of got similar vibes. Like as you said, I think it was strange. So hopefully, maybe they got out of the gate hot and ease those tensions. But if they start slow, I think it's only going to add to the pressure here.
I mean, they really need to get off to a hot start, especially considering the hole that they dug for themselves with that terrible start last year. But that's why I kept saying it. We needed to see Daniel Jones and these starters play a lot in the preseason, and they didn't. So I don't know how confident I am that we're getting off to a hot start this season. But, again, hopefully I'm wrong. And I don't know. It's just weird to see the GM get so defensive so early in the year. And I'm just hoping that it's not a precursor to what we're going to see throughout the season.
Our friend Johnny Boy submits a question for Anthony. Should the Giants go after Jason Brownlee? I think he fits you guys. He will be another Jet that becomes a good Giant. So for some context, he originally made the Jets 53. That's where I was going to start. I was going to start with the wide receivers as well. But then the Jets added Brendan Bates from the Chicago Bears at tight end. They only had 2 tight ends on the roster, so they added a third. And Jason Brownlee, as the 7th wide receiver, was the odd man out. So any interest in adding Brownlee to this wide receiver room for New York?
I'm not sure that he moves the needle a whole bunch, and I think that because Isaiah Hodgins got signed back to the Giants practice squad, they probably won't look to add any more receiving talent. Again, I don't think Isaiah Hodgins should have been cut. I think he should have been on the 53-man roster, but he's not. He is on the practice squad, and I think that the Giants probably plan on activating him more than once during the regular season, especially if they have any injuries. He's familiar with the scheme, he's familiar with the team, and he's got chemistry with Daniel Jones. So I think that that's going to be their wide receiver backup plan if they happen to run into any trouble this year.
Yeah, and Isaiah Hodgins is a better wide receiver than Jason Brownlee even. And I like Brownlee. I was part of the Jason Brownlee hive, hoping he would stick around and maybe be an Allen Lazard kind of replacement as a 4th or 5th receiver a year from now. But I wouldn't be shocked if he ends up going back to the Jets practice squad in some capacity here at some point. But all right, let's transition. Let's get into the Jets roster here. Starting off with the wide receiver room, not a ton of surprises. As I mentioned, I was going to start with this. Jason Brownlee makes it as the 7th receiver. He ends up getting waived so that they could add Brendan Bates at tight end. Originally, only 2 tight ends made the roster, which that jumped out as a red flag to a lot of fans, with Kenny Yeboah, who is the team's 3rd tight end starting the year on IR. But at the top, carries 6 wide receivers, but similar to the Giants, Irv Charles is just a special teamer. He's the Jets gunner, and he offers you essentially nothing at as a receiver. So it looks like the Jets are going to be having 5 guys, but with those 5 guys, I think it's fine group of 5. It's not elite, but Garrett Wilson at the top, I think, is going to be very good. And depending on Mike Williams' health, I think this room has potential.
I think there's plenty of potential in this receiving core. Like you said, Garrett Wilson at the top and Mike Williams, if he's healthy, you'll love what he brings to the table. Now, Allen Lazard is still on the team. I'm pretty sure that his contract was pretty immovable this summer.
Yep.
But if you're looking at Lazard and what he provides to the team, you just never know. It's such a mixed bag with him. Like, you can't tell if he's going to be average. You can't tell if he's going to be one of the worst wide receivers in the NFL this year, because some practices he looks great. Others he looks like he shouldn't be on an NFL roster. So that does give me a little bit of cause for concern with this receiving core, looking behind those first starting 2. But I really do like what they have in the slot. First of all, you know that Garrett Wilson's going to move in and out of the slot because they can move him around and play him all over the place. But with Xavier Gipson playing well all summer, and then Malachi Corley and the potential that he has, I like what the Jets are building here in this receiving core. Again, I don't know a ton about Irvin Charles, and I don't have the utmost confidence in Allen Lazard, but I think with that starting group, you have to feel really confident. You have to feel really good about what the Jets have, and considering who's throwing them the football, I think you feel pretty good about the fact that this receiving core has more than enough talent to get the job done.
First State Jets with a good point here, I think. Irv Charles' case is curious to me. Why waste a spot on a guy who gives you 0 outside of special teams? Downgrade slightly, I think it's more than slightly, by the way, at gunner, and keep a literal producer at another position. So, by the way, Justin Hardy, who was the Jets special teams ace for the previous 3 years, left in free agency, signed with the Cleveland Browns. He got cut by the Browns, and I was almost surprised in a way that the Jets didn't bring Hardy back based on how well he's performed with the team. Brant Boyer, really good special teams coordinator, has worked well with him. I was surprised that they won in general. Like, I think you can make a case for some other guys on defense who we'll get to in a second. Quantez Stiggers and Brandon Eccles at corner also played gunner, and frankly, I think did a better job than Irv Charles. But even then, when Justin Hardy became available, it was just that much more confusing that they keep Charles instead. I don't know. That was on the offense. That was maybe one of the bigger surprises, but this staff seems to just really like him, I guess.
It kind of reminds me of the conversation we were just having about the Giants and the way that they reshaped the back of their wide receiver room, going with a guy who has more special teams experience, or I guess more special teams potential, but not as much potential to contribute on offense. I don't know. It seems to be a trend here with both the Jets and the Giants really placing this heavy emphasis on special teams. And I get it because it's so important and it's a facet of the game that often goes overlooked. But there is something to be said about sacrificing quality talent on the more important phases of the game in offense and defense just for a slight upgrades, if anything, if even an upgrade on special teams. I don't know. I think that it's going to be something that we look back at midway through the year for the Jets and the Giants, and then we'll have to decide whether or not they made the right decisions there.
So what I wanted to get to next with the Jets is the defensive line. There was a lot of talk about which guys would make this defensive line, and they had 3 undrafted free agents in Eric Watts, Brandon McGregor, and Leonard Taylor, and all 3 end up making it. So 10 for now, 11 technically if you include Hassan Reddick in it. I was pleasantly surprised that they were able to keep all 3 of those guys. I will say, though, I think when Hassan Reddick reports, my guess would be that Eric Watts is the odd man out, but I thought it was a really cool story to see, a team that, 1, has high expectations, but 2, also was able to find a way to find 3 guys who are good enough to roster as undrafted free agents on this team. Specifically Leonard Taylor and Braden McGregor, I thought really showed out in the preseason and training camp.
I mean, let me just say from a Giants fan's perspective, this makes me upset. Like, this is so annoying that there's so much depth in the Jets defensive line. Like, we're talking Jermaine Johnson, then Will McDonald, then Takk McKinley, and you still have to hold on to Eric Watts because he's decent enough. Like, that's crazy that you guys have that many edge rushers / defensive ends that you can rely on. Also, Hassan Reddick when he comes back, if he does, and then Michael Clemens, and even Braden McGregor showed a lot this summer. There's just a lot of talent there on the defensive end. And then, like you said, Leonard Taylor, who is a guy that I was really hoping and praying would shake free somehow so that the Giants could add him to the back end of their roster. I thought that he could have contributed special or a pretty decent amount of playing time for the Giants this year if they were to have found a way to get him. But I think he's going to be a solid quality developmental player for the Jets. And I really just love what they have in their front 4. I mean, they have so much depth at those positions, and they have so much talent at the top of those position groups. It's really, really special looking at this team on paper and realizing like how deep it runs. I mean, again, Jermaine Johnson, then Will McDonald, then Takk McKinley. Takk McKinley would play significant snaps on this New York Giants team in my eyes. And he's 3rd string at one of these 2 defensive end positions for the Jets. So again, a lot of really nice talent there in the defensive front for the Jets.
Yeah, I mean, McKinley has been a great story in training camp. If Hassan Reddick doesn't play in week 1, which I think it's trending towards that, we'll see. Obviously, a lot more time to discuss before that first game against the San Francisco 49ers. I think McKinley would get a lot of run in that game. But also for Leonard Taylor, looking at this interior defensive line for the Jets, obviously Quinnen is here long-term. He's one of the best, interior guys in the league. Happy about that. But both Solomon Thomas and Javon Kinlaw are on 1-year deals. I think if the Jets can show, or if Leonard Taylor rather can show signs of development this year and kind of get better as the year goes on, I don't think it's outlandish to say that Leonard Taylor might end up being a cheap option for them on the interior next to Quinnen Williams a year from now. Maybe you don't have to spend another, I don't know, if Kinlaw has a good year, maybe he has to make closer to $10 million than the 7 he's getting now. And Solomon Thomas is pretty much the definition of a jag at this point in his career, unfortunately. So I'm high on Leonard Taylor. I think there's a chance that he could be a starter for this team down the line.
I totally agree with you. I'm high on him as well. Again, this is a player who, and Leonard Taylor, who at one point was considered a top 100 player in this draft class. For one reason or another, he didn't have that breakout season at Miami that people expected of him. Goes undrafted, probably shouldn't have gone undrafted. But again, this is a player that maybe had top 100 talent in the draft class that fell out of the draft. So you know that you're getting somebody who has potential. It's a really good pickup from the New York Jets. And it ties into a point that we've repeated throughout the summer, Matt, just kind of discussing how good teams find talent at positions that they're already good at so that when they have to pay those players and don't want to pay them anymore, they got somebody who's younger, who's ready to step into that role and maybe be even better. And that's what Leonard Taylor could be. The succession plan here for Javon Kinlaw can maybe just take another year to grow and develop, prove that he still has some of that top 100 talent that he flashed a couple seasons ago at Miami, and maybe become a pretty decent starter. So I really do like this move for the Jets and think that Leonard Taylor, I'm in the same boat as you. He could end up being a long-term starter on this team if things go right.
I think so. I really do. And kind of just looking at the rest of the roster, no really big surprises there. But as we were looking at the defensive line and admiring that, could we take a second to admire the depth at corner as well? Sauce Gardner, obviously, DJ Reed and Michael Carter is your starting trio with Brandon Eccles, Quantez Stiggers, and Jarek Bernard Converse waiting in the wings. That's again, that second crop is some young talent there. And we talked about Kinlaw as, final year of his deal. DJ Reed, same thing, entering the final year of his career, 29 years old now, probably won't get brought back, in my opinion, after the year. I think you could find maybe even potentially another starter with one of those three guys as well.
No doubt. I agree with you. And I think that especially when you have a Jets defensive coaching staff that you really believe in and that's gotten the most out of young players and backup level talents developing into something, I think you can feel a lot of confidence that there are potential starters waiting in the wings here for the Jets.
Love it. Let's get back to the chat, answer some questions. Johnny Boy says, Ant, come on over and be a Jet fan. We'll allow it, right, Matt? Anthony, can we get in on that? What do you think?
I don't quite think that's going to happen, but if I have to go through a 7th season of Daniel Jones, let's look ahead to the future here. We're in year 6. If I go through a 7th season of Daniel Jones, you might be able to convince me to jump ship.
I love it. But that would ruin the dynamic of this show. The whole idea that we had in starting this was to get a Jets perspective and a Giants perspective and a place for New York football fans to come together. So I would miss that too much, I think.
I would too. So I think for the sake of Big Apple Blitz, I'll maintain my allegiance to the New York Giants, even though they are absolutely going to start causing significant damage to my psyche going forward if I continue to blindly root for them.
How about you, Rock? Says best beers to drink on game day. Anthony, are you a beer guy? Are you drinking beers while watching the Giants?
I am a big beer guy. Love my beer. I don't necessarily drink too many beers on game days, though, just because I have to do a lot of work on those game days, write articles, do pregame shows, postgame shows, all that stuff, manage social media. But my pick for the best beer to drink on game days, I'll say any domestic light beer. But for me personally, it would be Michelob Ultra. They have a low ABV. They taste good. They go down smoothly. You can have quite a few of them without getting too sauced. So you can enjoy those on game days and still pay attention to your team and enjoy the game.
There you go. That's a really good pick. Fun fact, I'm gluten-free. I have celiac disease, so I can't partake in the beer. I'm more of a liquor guy. I take the exact opposite advice from you. I'm drinking bourbon on game day. So sometimes we get a little saucy in the post-game shows after, a couple whiskeys. Depending on how the game goes, I know we've done some wild turkey chugs on air in the post-game. So a little bit different, but I don't know. Cider, we can count cider. I guess Angry Orchard would be my
Good.
game day drink then.
Yeah, that sounds like fun. Maybe I will become a Jets fan. Get over to the wild side, start having a little bit more fun on these game days. You're making a compelling argument here, Matt.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it's good. First State Jet says cornerback and development is nice. Yeah, I mean, I think looking at it from the Jets roster at that point, and in the defensive side is exciting there. So I would agree with First State Jets. Got to go back to Johnny Boy, who I gave him a drink of choice last winter. So I can't wait for Jack Frost again with the cinnamon and cider. Thank you, Matt, again. So I turned Johnny Boy onto a nice drink here. We made essentially a hard cider with the winter Jack Daniels. Have you ever tried the winter Jack?
I have not, but I'm intrigued.
Yeah, winter Jack, little cinnamon stick in apple cider. It doesn't have to be like an Angry Orchard, like any old regular apple cider that you get at the store. Now that you turn the fireplace on too, we're starting to really cook around Thanksgiving time at that point.
I make something similar on Thanksgiving, actually. I get apple juice, I get Angry Orchards, and I get caramel vodka. And I put those
Ooh.
together and I make some cocktails for the fam, some dessert cocktails. Obviously, it's a lot of like sugar and sweets, but that's a good dessert cocktail on Thanksgiving. I've earned my reputation with my sister and her friends and amongst my family as being a really good bartender and making some really good cocktails. So maybe we'll have to start sharing some recipes on the show every week as we get closer to the holiday season.
I think so. I'm also the family bartender, or at a summer barbecue. Me and my sister do a big combined 4th of July party with both sets of friend groups. It's a lot of fun, but I'm always mixing drinks and doing cocktails there. So definitely gonna have to add that to a part of the show here on Big Apple Blitz. First State has a question for you. It says, "Ant, what's a Giants Eagles game like in Philly? I went to Jets Eagles 10-sack Luke Falk game in 2019. That was horrendous. With a bunch of Eagles buddies, it was wild." Have you ever been to one before?
So I haven't been to one, but I'll tell you what I've heard from those who have been to them that I've spoken to. They're like violent. They get very scary. The Eagles fans are not friendly, and especially to opposing team division rival fans. I know that they're very well known for throwing batteries at fans, which is just insane and painful. Beer cans, everything. They don't hold back. So they just they get violent. That's what I've heard. That's not the reason that I haven't gone. In fact, it would be the reason that I do go, because I think that would be pretty incredible to live through an experience like that. But just haven't been able to get to a game. Hoping to one day go to the Lincoln. And I think that I'll wait until the Giants are good, though, because I don't want to see them get blown out on the road in Philly. So once they get good, I'll go to a game.
That's totally fair. And the last few years in Philly at the link, I don't think has gone well, if memory serves correct, for the Giants.
No, it's it's not going well, and I'm not going there until I know that it will go well. Because again, those are some violent fans, some nasty fans, and I hate Philly more than anything. I might turn into the violent, nasty one if things go wrong for the Giants there. So I'm just going to be careful for myself and my future, and wait until the Giants are good before I head there.
Yeah, totally fair. I've been to, not for a game, but I've been to Lincoln Financial Field twice, actually, both for concerts. I will say I like the stadium. I think it's nice and how it's laid out. I love in Philly how like all the stadiums are right there with each other, where the Eagles play, the Phillies, the Sixers, and the Flyers is like kind of all in that same spot. That's really cool. But I really have no interest in going there on game day. The dealing with the Eagles fans, I don't know how. I'm a Jets fan and I don't want to do it, so I couldn't imagine trying to do that as a Giants fan. Although I will say, if I did go to an away game for a Jets division rival, I would love to experience Bills Mafia. Going up for a tailgate for a Bills game, that seems like a lot of fun.
Yeah, that sounds like a great time. I love the Buffalo Bills fans. Sorry, know a lot of Jets fans won't want to hear me say that, but I think they're awesome. I love Bills Mafia. I like the Bills. I don't have any problems with really any of these teams. I actually kind of like every team in the AFC East. I don't really have much going against any of those four teams. I know that's not the same for Jets fans, but I think that the Bills are a lot of fun and their fans seem like they're right up my alley. I may or may not have been known to pull a little Bills Mafia stunt here and there during my time in college in my fraternity. I might have broken quite a few tables. Can't confirm nor deny that. But I think that I would have a lot of fun at a Bills tailgate is all I'm going to say.
Yeah, hard agree. I would love that. Maybe we could do like Matt and Anthony hit the road and road trip up to Bills game to get some content out of that. I think that'd be a lot of fun. But even for their road games, I think it's almost 10 years ago now, but I went with some of my buddies who had season tickets to a Jets Bills Thursday night football game at MetLife. And Bills Mafia, they got there like the day before and were tailgating from the day before. In Buffalo, they get there on Thursday. They all park their RVs and like camp out for 3 days before the game and party. So I know that Jets and Bills are rivals, but I have a ton of respect for the Bills Mafia and their fan base. They've been through a lot. Don't want to see them win the division anytime soon or win a Super Bowl or anything like that. But I tip my cap to them. That's a good fan base.
Yeah, and I tip my cap to Jets fans equally. I tip my cap to Giants fans as well right now because it's been a pretty rough 10 years, but it's been even more difficult for the Jets. I mean, heartbreak after heartbreak, playoff drought that's longer than any team in the NFL. I get it. I probably shouldn't have repeated that point, maybe ruffled a few feathers just for bringing that up, but I tip my hat to Jets fans for staying loyal to a team that just hasn't given them a whole lot to root for, but it does look like things are turning around. Love this roster that the Jets have constructed. Just hoping to see them stay healthy and actually have a successful season.
There we go. Love that. Let's do one more from First State. Jets was in Pittsburgh for the AFC Championship game. That stinks. They got a little dicey walking around in Jets gear. Yeah, I don't know if this is a hot take or not. Maybe for Jets fans, I would say it's not. I think the Steelers are the team I hate the most outside of the Jets division in the conference. They have gotten gave the 2004 Pittsburgh Steelers gave a young Matt O'Leary his first sports heartbreak in the divisional round. So it didn't start off well. And then obviously 2010 AFC Championship game also was a knife in the side. I will say I'm a big Mike Tomlin fan. I think he's one of the better coaches in the league. And it's amazing that he just never has a losing record, but I hate Pittsburgh. I would never want to go to a Steelers game because I hate them and I hate their fans.
Yeah, I also love Mike Tomlin. I don't have much against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and you're kind of making me wonder. You said that they're your favorite or your least favorite team, your most hated team outside of division. I don't know if I have one for the Giants. Like outside of the NFC East, who is my least favorite team? Maybe the Packers. We've had some bad run-ins with them, but we also beat them in really historically awesome fashion in 2011-12 playoff run. So I don't know. Maybe they would be the team, but you might have to list a few and see if I like them or not, because I can't really think of one. I really just hate the Philadelphia Eagles more than anything in this world. So,
yeah, I was going to say, like, I'm trying to think because mine stems from like 2 really tough playoff losses that I saw. It's like, I just hate that team. I can't stand like looking at Troy Polamalu's face, like brings me just physical pain. I can't do it. But for the Giants, they beat the Packers twice in 07 and 11 on both those runs. They haven't really run into somebody that like that knocked them out. I mean, they lost to the Packers in what was that 2016, but and then the last time was a divisional game against the Eagles in 22.
Yeah.
So.
It's always the Eagles, really. Like all my heartbreaking moments as a Giants fan stem from losses against the Eagles. So that's the team that I hate more than anything. And I don't know. I haven't really been incentivized to grow a passionate hatred towards any of the other teams in the NFL. So.
What about the Cowboys? JV Brunk says Ant doesn't hate the Cowboys. Wow, that's a shocker.
So that is a shocker, and it always surprises a lot of people. But my cousin, who I was very close to growing up, who's no longer with us, was a huge diehard Cowboys fan. So I have a sentimental place in my heart for the Dallas Cowboys because of him.
Okay, that's fair. I will give you that one. I will say I was for the longest time and still am. I will go to my grave defending Tony Romo and Phillip Rivers. I think they were a very underrated quarterbacks from the 2000 era and get a lot of blame because they never won anything. But I think there's many factors in that. So I did stand the Dallas Cowboys for a little bit. I don't like them as much anymore now, but like Tony Romo era Dallas Cowboys, I kind of not like rooted hard for them, but I wanted them to prove me right about Tony Romo. So I did like them.
Yeah, my secret is that I root really hard for Dak Prescott. Like, I love the guy off the field. I think he's really easy to root for. He's battled through more adversity than most people, and it's hard to root against him for me personally. And again, like I mentioned, the sentimental value that I have attached to that team due to a family member. So can't really hate on them, but I will counterpoint. I hated Phillip Rivers. I could not stand that man. I thought that he was the whiniest, most annoying and arrogant quarterback in the NFL during his time, and I pray and I praise God every single day that the Giants ended up trading Phillip Rivers and pulling off the blockbuster to obtain Eli Manning, who went on to win us 2 Super Bowls while Phillip Rivers won none.
Can I give you, I think we should end with maybe my spiciest take of them all that I know is going to piss you off.
Oh, God. I think I know where this is going. Let me hear it.
Phillip Rivers, best quarterback from the 04 draft class.
Matt, please stop. Please
Yeah,
stop.
he is. Giants would have been better with Phillip Rivers than
No,
Eli.
they would not have. No,
Oh
they
yeah,
would
they
not
would have
have.
won more than 2 Super Bowls.
No, they would not have. Everybody always does this. They play revisionist history. They look back. Eli Manning, okay, that 2007-8 Super Bowl run, fantastic. He's great. And that was what really established him. They forget that after that season, the following year, I mean, the guy was playing at a near MVP level. The Giants should have won it all back-to-back seasons, and it would have been a dynasty at that point that the Giants were building. Plaxico Burress hurts himself in a nightclub. It all comes crumbling down. Couple seasons later, Eli bounces back and wins another one. He could have had three Super Bowls and probably would have been the MVP in the third one as well. Very possible that could have happened. I don't know. I can't handle this one. I don't want to hear it. Eli Manning dealt with more adversity than most quarterbacks in the biggest media market in the world, the most scrutinized team. Like, he is just the pro's pro, and I can't stand how underrated he gets just because he had a high interception total in his career. The guy won games. The guy led the team to historic championship victories. I don't want to hear Eli Manning over Phillip Rivers every single day.
Eli Manning career passer rating 84. Phillip Rivers 95 too.
Doesn't move me.
I love it. I wanted to stir the pot for you a little bit, get you a little fired up. You were too nice at the end of the show. You love every team in the NFL. I had to get some reaction out of you.
Yeah, okay, that's fair enough. I'm just a man who doesn't have a lot of hate in his body, except for the Philadelphia Eagles. The hatred that I have for that team really just can't even be overstated. Like, it's bad. I try to avoid them as a topic of conversation anytime I do Fireside Giants, anytime we do this show. I don't want to talk about it because if I start going down memory lane and discussing some of my heartbreaking moments with the Eagles, it's going to get ugly. So we're just going to focus on the fact that Eli Manning is a future first ballot Hall of Famer. He's better than Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers probably won't get in the Hall of Fame. Eli's my GOAT. Don't disrespect him. It's going to be a lot of fun when he goes to the Hall of Fame next year.
There we go. Guys, that's going to do it for us on this episode. Thanks for hanging out. Make sure to follow Fireside Giants for Anthony's Fire Giant takes. You could go to Matt O'Leary NY or Talking Jets for my coverage. I'll be doing a live stream at 3:00 with Jeremy over on Talking Jets. So if you want more Jets talk, make sure to hang out over there. Guys, a lot of fun. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back on Monday for more Jets and Giants.